I use my metal mine here, my Google metal mine. Right? Don't you wish you had some metal mines?
Yes.
Especially the health one.
Yeah, like Wayne.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Steel push is pretty cool.
Yeah, I look at them now that way too.
I think I'd like to be a conjuror though.
Those are the ones that
They
take
absorb-
bones and
Yeah, they absorb
yeah.
the body and then become and then live for this. They're immortal.
Yeah. Then you could just shape your body however you want. I feel like a six-pack today.
Mm. Yeah.
Not that six-pack.
Because I dropped it, okay? I dropped it. In the crack. I made the cut, I curved it all out, and then I was breaking the
Is she-
first and I dropped it.
Is she critiquing the gaps in the
Yeah,
top?
I knew she would.
It'll be covered by trim. Yes, it will. It'll be covered by trim, and then it'll be a standard grout width.
Yesterday though, they moved all the chairs back and cleaned the carpet and fixed the mural.
All right. Good morning.
The 13th Warrior.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That was a good show. I watched that.
See? Y'all thought I was crazy.
I forgot about that show. I'll have to watch that again.
I obviously forgot about it too. It wasn't that good.
Really?
That line
I-
stuck with me.
I guess it. Back when it first came out, it was pretty good.
So when do you think that thing came out?
That was like when I was in the Navy, so probably 2000, around 2002, 2003,
99.
99. Holy moly.
13th Warrior.
All right. Volunteer to open us up in prayer this morning. Val?
Thank you, God, for this morning, that we can all be here together. Thank you, God, for giving us a safe and wonderful place to meet. And pray, Lord, that you help us to learn so that we can be better servants for you. Amen.
Amen. All right. Quick quiz. What does the term Arab mean?
Mixed,
Mixed. Yeah.
is that right?
Yep. I'm just going to hound it into your minds here.
It's
What is-
spelled E-R-E-B.
Actually, the
Hebrew transliteration is E-R-E-B.
well, the Arabic is different, but yeah. What does Muslim mean, or Islam? They're coherent. What does Islam mean? Huh?
Yeah. Chosen.
No.
What is
Good.
it, chosen?
Star for David.
What is it?
Submit. Submission. What does Quran mean? To announce. To recite. Yeah, there you go.
You know, when they teach vocabulary in school, they give you
Yeah, but then you can cheat. I'm trying to make you use your memory.
I told you my metal mind is empty.
Yeah, mine too. What does caliph mean? No. No. Successor?
I thought that was Rashid.
No. Caliph means successor. So
What does Rashid mean?
the right, the righteous.
Proper,
Yep.
righteous. Okay.
Can we take a pause here and I can go home and get my notebook?
So caliph means successor. Successor to who? Who are they succeeding? Muhammad. Okay. And then Pastor mentioned the first caliph was the Rashidun. Yep.
There's a lot less people named Muhammad back then.
Yeah. There was one. What was the second dynasty? Caliph dynasty? Umayyad. Good. And then the third? Yep. Okay. Abbasid. All right, so
Woke up on the wrong side of the bed, hating her husband.
the early half of the Abbasid Caliph we were talking about last weekend was the golden age, what the historians call the golden age of Islam. So if you remember, there was a big effort to seek out the sciences, to translate all the scientific texts to Arabic. They established algebra, the L in front of algebra. Huh?
They put the al in front of algebra? So, Jebra?
No, I forget what Al means. I'd have to look that up. I forgot. AL. Alcohol was another one. So they were the
I thought that was, there's another word for that.
Ibn,
Ibn, yeah.
That's son of, right?
son of.
Son of.
Yep.
Ibn.
So they invented spirits, so alcohol.
I thought they had alcohol earlier than that. Like wine was alcoholic, right?
This is hard, like distill. Yeah.
Oh, not just regular fermentation.
Algorithms,
Which alcohol has more uses than just,
right?
being like
Medicinal.
vodka or anything like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it has medicinal purposes.
Algorithms. So they established or developed algorithms.
I really want to know what al means then, because that's too common of a thread.
All right, hold on. I have it right here.
Christy's looking it up.
You said Ibn means what?
Ibn means son of.
It's equivalent to Hebrew ben.
I don't know why you're so upset about this. I mean, it's on his PowerPoint right there.
I need a definition.
So, I mean,
If it's placed before
The
an adjective.
means the.
Yeah. Means the.
Oh.
So the gibberish,
Oh,
algebra.
Al Ibn. So the son.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, ding, 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 ding. Light bulb.
Reunion of broken parts.
I kind of like that.
It's algebra, right? It's algorithm.
Yeah, so that's algebra. Reunion of broken parts.
You could also spell that.
Logarithm.
That's really cool.
Also, we mentioned they discovered a star which they named Betelgeuse, which Hollywood used as Beetlejuice. Also, that's where Jafar. So they had if you remember, there was a family that was kind of like the royal butler to the Caliph, which is the Barmuk family, and within that was a servant named Jafar, who was very close friend to Al-Rashid, he was the 5th Caliph. And so the Arabs wrote a story called The 1001 Nights, and that's where Aladdin, the Disney movie Aladdin, Jafar is loosely based on. Also, we talked about how the importation of paper from China kind of expanded their Quranic text and their poetry as well. And we talked about the Abbasid influence. So they had, in Constantinople, they began imitating the architecture in Baghdad, as well as their dress. So the Emperor Theophilus built a Baghdadian-style palace, while the Byzantines went about in turbans and kaftans, which is like the tunic that they wore with the belt. And then we talked about over the Caliphate dynasties, what the term Arab, or who was considered to be an Arab. And so within the first dynasty, the Rashidun Caliph, an Arab was basically a Bedouin. So there was a divide between the northern and southern tribes. So the northern tribe were the Bedouins, and the southern tribes were more of a cultured type of Arab, and they weren't considered true Arabs. And then during the Umayyad dynasty, when they began expanding into Iran, Syria, Iraq, Arab was considered, the line between north and south faded, and a true Arab was considered someone just from Arabia that spoke the high dialect. And then during the Abbasid dynasty, because they were focused, especially during the early part of the dynasty, they were focused on knowledge. And the term Arab really became known as anybody that spoke the High Arabic. So really a dissolving of the Arab nationality. Initially, they weren't. I mean, they were in the sense that, like, Bedouins were a family-style tribe, so their tribes were structured by family, where the leader, the chieftain, was, one of the elders of the family. And the southern tribes were more, I guess you could say, modern, so they had a king that ruled, so they were different in that regard. But yes, as they began expanding their territory, they began absorbing Persian culture, specifically Persian culture. And we talked about that too, as one of the reasons for the decline of the Abbasid dynasty was that, men, I think I had it up here. Oh, also they moved. Where did the Umayyad dynasty move the capital to? Damascus. And then the Abbasid moved their capital to Baghdad. They also built the Great Mosque of Samarra, which this is kind of a comparison between the representations of the Tower of Babel, and it's built near the same site as the Tower of Babel were. Historians. So that's interesting.
We just call it the Baghdad wedding cake.
So yeah, with the expansion of their territory, there was an increase in polygamy and concubinage. So the men would take in Persian women, and then, as we discussed, who's at home raising the kids? You know, who's the largest influence in the family? It's the mother. So as the children grew up, they were largely influenced by the Persian culture, and that created a lot of tension within the royal families, the families of the caliphate, or the lineage of the caliphate, who had legitimate blood. All right. So I think we caught up to where we left off. So let's talk further about the decline of the Abbasid Caliph. So during this time period, and even during the Umayyad dynasty, slaves had become pretty common amongst the Arabs. But it was under the Abbasid dynasty that the treatment of slaves had become adherent, and the conditions were appalling. So they would make farmers sleep out in the mud. They enlisted Turks as their slave soldiers, and their conditions were also treated poorly. Minimal wages. Food was scarce or of poor quality. So one of the Turkish tribes that were enlisted was a tribe called the Zanj. So they had finally had enough of their treatment, and they were also plantation workers brought in from Africa. So the Zanj led a revolt in 869 against the Abbasid Caliphate when Al-Mu'taz was caliph, and they killed an estimated 500,000 people.
They're bad. Where'd that happen?
That was in Baghdad. So they,
In Baghdad?
yeah, so they made their way to Baghdad, and then once they conquered it, they reestablished Al-Muqtara in southwestern Iran as their capital. And from there, they conducted guerrilla warfare. They caused a temporary inversion where the slave became the slave master. The Zanj bought and sold freeborn Arabs using female descendants of Muhammad as concubines and making them work as maids for their own women. So basically a flip in roles. And this was one of the greatest dishonors to Arabs, to have their women. You know, it was okay for the men to take concubines of different nationalities, but for an Arab woman to be taken by someone who wasn't Arab was one of the greatest dishonors to the family. There's also a Shia sect in 930 called the Karmaitians. They initiated a coup and raided Mecca, where they would steal the black stone. If you remember the black stone that resides in the Kaaba today. So they stole the stone, and they from the Kaaba, and they would hold it for 20 years.
What's the deal with the stone, the black stone?
So it's been a symbol of worship even prior to the establishment of Islam. It's been part of their culture. It started out as a pagan worship piece, and then as Islam established, it was viewed as a stone sent by God, touched by God.
Because it came from the heavens, right?
Right.
Meteor.
Yeah, the theory is it's a meteor. Obviously, you know, geologists haven't been given access to study it.
Well, they did. They just beheaded them when they were done.
Mm.
So they couldn't find it.
So the hierarchy of Arabness over conquered nations began to dissolve, as Persians especially led a movement called the Levelers, or it's also called the Shu'ubiyah. Shu'ubiyah, where they used Muhammad's teachings against the Arabs. Within Muhammad's teachings, it says, Allah created you from male and female and made you into peoples and tribes that you may know one another. And so from this teaching, they demanded equality to the Arabs. And so similar movements also made traction in Egypt, North Africa, and Spain. Even today, the same movement, the Shu'ubiyah, is still active with the Houthis. So they claim equality with the Saudis, who are basically the modern day Bedouins. So yeah, still active today. So that's part of, that's much of the decline of the Abbasid dynasty is through revolts from Shia sects, as well as we'll see, Sunni. So enter the Turks. So the Turks entered Muslim history as slaves, primarily under the Umayyad dynasty as domestic servants, and then as soldiers under the Abbasid dynasty. And then by the mid-900s, the Turks were leading Caliph troops into battle. So the Turks were very similar in nature to the Bedouins. They were nomadic. They lived in tribes. They were warriors, fierce warriors. Even probably more so than the Bedouins. They were expert blacksmiths. They were highly advanced in working with steel and iron. So their weaponry was advanced. So they made great soldiers, and they would.
Also a dumb question. They originated from modern Turkey?
We'll get there. So.
Just wondering where they're from.
No, they're from Russia, actually.
When was you said 869 was the takeover? The first, when the Zanj?
Yeah.
Who were Turks?
Yes, they were Turks-made slaves.
But Russia is such a huge country, and it touches so many different parts. Like, there's a lot of different cultures within Russia.
So, so they, being great soldiers, they would work their way up in the ranks to eventually be, they'd be leading the Caliph troops into war as generals. So then as the Abbasid Caliph began to lose control of its territories, the Turk commanders would take advantage and move into more political leadership roles. Abu Bajkam was one such example. He started out as a slave soldier for the Abbasid Caliphate under al-Radi in 935, the Caliph gave Bajkam a position of governor over the eastern provinces of Iran because of his achievements as a general. And so Abu Bajkam began plotting to depose a senior official to the Caliph al-Radi, who was plotting. So this other Caliph was plotting against Ibn Rak. Sorry, I misspoke there. So this individual, Ibn Raik, was plotting to depose the Caliph at the time, who was al-Radi. And so when Abu Bajkam got wind of it, he invaded Baghdad and overthrew this official.
Not the Caliph.
No, it was an official within.
From Baghdad died.
Yeah, it was an official of high position under the Caliph. And so for this, for Bajkam's basically weeding out this weasel, the Caliph al-Radi gave Bajkam the title of Amir al-Amura, which is Prince, Commander of Commanders. So he gave him the highest position possible outside of the Caliph. So then Bajkam and his Turkish army became the bidding tool of the Caliph. And as al-Radi approached his deathbed, Bajkam was named de facto ruler in 938. So he was kind of a sit-in until the next caliph was established. So
Amir means prince?
yep. Al-Amura. Amir al-Amura. means prince, commander of commanders.
That would be 5-star general. Commander of the troops.
So this is basically the absorption of the Turks into Islam. Actually, not it. They were already many Islam converts. It was the absorption into the political realm.
I'm confused with your prior comments about the overthrow in 869. 'Cause now we're at 938. It seems like did the reversion reverse? Did the Zanj that overtook everything and the pure blood Arabs were slaves to them, did that resolve itself somehow? And now the Turks
So yeah, sorry, I misspoke there. So they did not overthrow the Caliph in Baghdad. They suffered a heavy blow. They were pushed back out of Baghdad,
Okay.
and then from there they reestablished their capital south of Baghdad.
Yeah, so they became independent
Right.
at that point.
Much like many of the Sunni sects at the time. So there were many sects within Islam that were Sunni that basically were allowed to live and basically control certain territories by the Caliph.
Do you remember when the Great Schism was between the Church of Rome and Eastern Orthodox? Was that 725 or 8 something?
When you say
That was happening around this time.
I think 7 something.
Because in part of my school, I remember we were, following, church, quote unquote, church history, and I guess a bunch of, following that separation,
that was a split between Rome and the Eastern Orthodox. That was in 10,000 or 1000.
So
AD.
following that, do you
Later?
talk about how
Mhm.
they paired up and lost a bunch of Eastern Orthodox to Islam because it was kind of this like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So a bunch of folks of Eastern Orthodox faith paired up with like Muslim armies to fight the Church of Rome, and then it ended up like, oh, you guys actually
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, I haven't got to that time period yet, but yeah.
Okay. That made me laugh.
Yeah, that's where they excommunicated the Christian church based in Rome.
Yeah, 1054.
So Turks are gaining power, and then enter the Seljuks, which are another Turkish tribe. So the Seljuks, basically all Turks, descended from, this is Lake Baikal, which is up in Russia, southern Russia. So they were nomadic peoples, hunters, gatherers within this region. And around the 8th century, they began advancing south. So just kind of give you a comparison between the region they're used to, which is it's actually pretty similar to this area, very wooded, alpine, but very cold. This is one of the largest lakes in Russia, and in the wintertime it freezes over completely. So they're used to very extreme climates. So they go from that to the deserts of Arabia.
Be like you on a boat.
Yeah, but they adapt very well. So from around so they eventually descend down to the Sea of Aral, which is right here. So now they're just north of Turkmenistan, gaining power. They convert to Islam. And then in 970, they continued continued south, and they entered into Caliph territory. And then they continued south, and eventually they conquered Baghdad in 1055. So they removed the Caliph, but because they're smart and they know if they destabilized the religious civil organization that Islam has been following for the past 300 years, that there would probably be a big dissension and disorganization. So the the Turks, the Seljuks, they basically take a vassal caliph who's still Arab from the royal tribe, Qurashi tribe, and they give him the office of caliph, but really it's a sorry, before I get there, Tughril, who was the first Seljuk ruler in Baghdad, became so powerful that he was the first non-Arab to cross the Euphrates and into the peninsula since at least the time before, time of the pre-Islamic period. So up until the Turks, the region of Arabia has not been intruded on by anybody other than the Arabs. The Islamic baton had been completely passed on from the Arabs to the Turks, although they allowed Arabs to maintain the office of caliph. So as I was saying, the office of caliph now was nothing other than a title and a symbol, basically a sort of mascot. So while the Turk would establish himself up as the ruler or sultan. So this is where the word sultan comes from. So, which means power. So the Turk would become the king, and then the caliph was kind of like the pope. So it's really a separation between civil rule and religious. Yeah. But the caliph was under the command of the sultan. So they had lost their power.
When is this? 1055?
Yep.
Right after that?
1055, right after that. Yep.
Same time as the Great Schism. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And also, the Turks were Sunni, obviously, because they were not of royal Qurashi blood. So to them, to have someone part of the, or be a legitimate caliph, it was through forced election. So, yeah. So I'll stop there. We're getting close to the so the Great Schism and the
Suleiman the Great.
Crusades. Yeah.
Is he a Turk? He must have been a Turk.
Suleiman? I think so.
Mind blown. Wow.
Yeah, he was a Turk.
He wasn't Arab, he was a Turk. Dirty Russians.
All right, any comments or questions? A little short today, but all right. That's it. Do we want to do prayer requests while I'm here?